The small town of Maplewood was known for its quiet charm and friendly faces. Nestled between rolling hills and surrounded by dense forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. In the heart of this sleepy town stood Miller's Diner, a family-owned eatery that had been around for decades. It wasn't fancy or modern, but it had character. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with swivel stools, and walls adorned with black and white photos of the town's history. The diner was the pride of the Miller family, especially Laura Miller, the youngest daughter who worked there as a waitress. Laura was 24 years old. With curly brown hair she often tied back into a messy bun, and bright green eyes that sparkled even when she was tired. She had grown up in the diner, helping her parents serve meals and clean tables since she was a child. Now as an adult, she juggled long shifts at the diner while dreaming of something bigger. Someday she hoped to leave Maplewood behind and explore the world beyond the hills. But for now, life revolved around taking orders, pouring coffee, and making sure every customer left happy. On a chilly Thursday evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, the diner door swung open, letting in a gust of cold air. Laura looked up from wiping down the counter and saw a man walk in. He was unlike anyone she'd ever seen in Maplewood. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, he carried himself with confidence. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his sharp features gave him an air of sophistication. Laura blinked, momentarily caught off guard by his presence. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "Do you have a table available?" Laura nodded quickly, grabbing a menu from the counter. "Of course, right this way." She led him to a booth near the window, where the soft glow of the streetlights outside illuminated the table. As she handed him the menu, their eyes met briefly, and Laura felt a strange flutter in her chest. Shaking it off, she smiled politely. "Can I get you anything to drink while you decide?" "A cup of coffee would be great," he replied, returning her smile. There was something disarming about him, a warmth that seemed out of place in someone so polished. As Laura poured his coffee, she couldn't help but steal glances at him. Who was he? What brought him to Maplewood? Most outsiders only passed, through on their way to bigger cities. But this man looked like he belonged in boardrooms or luxurious penthouses, not a humble diner tucked away in the countryside. Still, she didn't pry. Small-town manners dictated that she keep her curiosity to herself. When she returned with his coffee, he thanked her graciously and began scanning the menu. "What do you recommend?" he asked, looking up at her. "Well," Laura said, leaning slightly against the edge of the booth, "the burgers are our most popular item. People say they're the best in town. But if you're looking for something lighter, the chicken salad isn't bad either." He chuckled softly. "I'll trust your judgment. Let's go with the burger." "Good choice," Laura said before heading to the kitchen to place his order. As she relayed it to the cook, her mind wandered back to the stranger. There was something intriguing about him, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or maybe it was simply the fact that he seemed so out of place in her little corner of the world. While waiting for his food, the man took out his phone and scrolled through emails, occasionally sipping his coffee. From the snippets Laura overheard as she refilled his cup, it sounded like he was involved in some big business deal. Terms like acquisition and investment portfolio floated through the air, words that felt foreign in the cozy diner. Yet despite his obvious wealth and success, he didn't come across as arrogant or distant. If anything, he seemed approachable. Finally, the burger arrived, cooked to perfection with a side of crispy fries. Laura placed it in front of him with a smile. "Here you go. Hope it lives up to your expectations." He took a bite and nodded appreciatively. "This might be one of the best burgers I've ever had," he said, surprising her. "You weren't exaggerating." Laura laughed lightly. "Told. Our cook has been perfecting that recipe for years." They exchanged a few more pleasantries before he paid his bill and prepared to leave. Before stepping out into the night, he turned to Laura and extended his hand. "Thank you for the excellent service. My name's Ryan, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Ryan." "I'm Laura. she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, but gentle, and for a moment their eyes locked again. As Ryan walked away, disappearing into the darkness, Laura found herself staring after him, wondering if she'd ever see him again. Little did she know this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change her life, and the lives of those around her, forever. The following weeks passed quickly for Laura, filled with the usual routine of work at the diner and quiet evenings at home. She hadn't thought much about Ryan after their brief meeting. After all, why would someone like him remember her? But fate had other plans. One Saturday afternoon, her father, John, called the entire family into the living room to make an announcement. "I've invited someone special to join us for dinner tonight," John said, his voice brimming with excitement. "His name is Ryan Carter, and he's a very important businessman." Laura froze mid-step, nearly dropping the glass of water she was holding. "Ryan Carter?" she repeated, her heart skipping a beat. "You mean the guy I served at the diner?" John nodded proudly. "That's right. He stopped by earlier this week to talk about investing in some local businesses. I figured it'd be a good opportunity to get to know him better, and maybe convince him to help out our diner, too." Laura groaned inwardly. Of course, her father would see this as a chance to secure financial support. Her siblings, however, were thrilled. They immediately began speculating about what Ryan might be like, joking that Laura should put on her best dress since she already knew him. By the time dinner rolled around, the house buzzed with nervous energy. Laura helped her mother prepare the meal, chopping vegetables and setting the table, all while trying not to think about how awkward this evening was going to be. When the doorbell rang, she hesitated before answering it, dreading the moment she'd have to face Ryan again. "Good evening, Laura." Ryan greeted her warmly when she opened the door. He looked more relaxed than the last time they'd met, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt instead of a suit. Still, his presence radiated confidence, making Laura feel even more self-conscious. "Hi, Ryan," she replied, forcing a smile. "Come on in. Everyone's waiting." As they entered the dining room, introductions were made. John shook Ryan's hand enthusiastically, while Laura's siblings, Matt and Emily, eyed him curiously. Dinner started off politely enough, with John leading the conversation by asking Ryan about his work and travels. Ryan answered graciously, sharing stories about cities he'd visited and projects he'd been involved in. Despite his success, he managed to come across as humble and approachable, which only added to Laura's growing discomfort. Things took a turn when Matt leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "So, Ryan, did you know my sister serves burgers to billionaires?" Laura shot him a glare, her cheeks flushing red. "Matt, stop it." "No, really," Matt continued, ignoring her. "She told us you came into the diner and ordered one of our famous burgers. What did you think of it?" Ryan chuckled, clearly amused. "It was delicious. Your sister recommended it herself," Emily chimed in, giggling. "Maybe Laura will become your personal chef someday." The teasing went on, each comment digging deeper into Laura's embarrassment. She tried to laugh it off, but inside she felt like shrinking away. Why did her family always have to embarrass her in front of strangers? Finally, unable to take it anymore, Laura snapped. "Enough!" she exclaimed, slamming her fork down on the table. All eyes turned to her, startled by her outburst. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, without thinking, Laura stood up, walked over to Ryan, and kissed him squarely on the lips. It wasn't romantic or passionate. It was defiant, meant to shock her family into stopping their relentless teasing. As soon as it happened, she realized what she'd done and pulled back, mortified. The room fell completely silent. Ryan stared at her, wide-eyed, while her family gaped in disbelief. Laura's face burned with shame as she stammered, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." To everyone's surprise, Ryan burst out laughing. "Well," he said, still chuckling, "that's certainly one way to end a conversation." His reaction broke the tension, and soon the rest of the family joined in with nervous laughter. Though the mood lightened, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She excused herself from the table, retreating to the kitchen to collect her thoughts. Later that night, as the dishes were being cleared, Laura found herself replaying the events in her mind. Had she ruined everything? Would Ryan never want to speak to her, or her family again? And why did the idea of losing his respect bother her so much? Unbeknownst to her, Ryan lingered in the living room, speaking quietly with John. Whatever they discussed remained private, but as Ryan prepared to leave, he gave Laura a reassuring nod. "Thanks for having me," he said. "And don't worry about earlier. Life's too short to dwell on mistakes." Though his words eased her guilt, Laura couldn't help but wonder if this was the last time she'd see him. Little did she know this chaotic dinner was just the beginning. After the chaos of the family dinner, Laura retreated to the kitchen feeling like she'd just survived a storm. She busied herself with cleaning up, hoping the repetitive motion of washing dishes would calm her racing thoughts. But no matter how hard she scrubbed or rinsed, the memory of kissing Ryan lingered in her mind. It wasn't just embarrassment that weighed on her, it was guilt. Guilt for embarrassing her family, guilt for acting impulsively, and guilt for not knowing what to say to fix things. As she dried a plate, she heard muffled voices coming from the living room. Curious, she paused and listened carefully. Her father, John, was speaking with Ryan, their tones low but serious. At first, she couldn't make out what they were saying, but then snippets of their conversation drifted through the doorway. "I'm telling you, Mr. Carter," John said, his voice heavy with frustration. "We've done everything we can to keep this place running, but it's getting harder every month if something doesn't change soon." Laura froze, gripping the dish towel tightly. They were talking about the diner, about its struggles. She crept closer to the doorway, careful not to be seen, and peeked into the living room. Ryan sat across from her father, his posture relaxed but his expression thoughtful. Between them lay a stack of papers, bills, invoices, and bank statements. The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. The diner was in trouble, worse than she had realized. Ryan leaned forward, studying the documents. "How much do you need to stay afloat?" he asked, his tone calm but probing. John hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Enough to cover the mortgage and pay off some overdue loans. Maybe $50,000? Laura's breath caught in her throat. $50,000 might as well have been $1 million. Where would they ever get that kind of money? She felt a wave of despair wash over her, followed by anger, at herself, at her circumstances, at the unfairness of it all. Ryan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he sat back in his chair, his gaze distant, as if lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. "I'll see what I can do." Her father's eyes widened. "You mean it? You'd really help us?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Let me review these numbers and talk to my team. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best." Tears pricked at the corners of John's eyes, and he reached out to shake Ryan's hand firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You don't know what this means to us." Laura stepped back from the doorway, her heart pounding. She wanted to feel relief, gratitude even, but instead, she felt uneasy. Was Ryan only helping because he pitied them? Or worse, because of what happened at dinner? The kiss replayed in her mind, and she cringed. Had she unintentionally manipulated him into offering assistance? When Ryan finally left, Laura avoided saying goodbye. She stayed in the kitchen until she heard the front door close, then slumped onto a chair, burying her face in her hands. Her mother, Sarah, found her there moments later. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently, placing a comforting hand on Laura's shoulder. Laura shook her head. "I don't know, Mom. I feel like everything's falling apart. And now Ryan's going to think we're using him or something." Sarah sighed, pulling up a chair beside her. "Honey, your dad didn't invite him here to beg for money. He genuinely thought Ryan could help the town, but..." She trailed off, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes when people care about others, they want to help. That doesn't make it wrong. But what if Ryan only offered because of me?" Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "What if he thinks I kissed him to trick him?" Sarah gave her a reassuring smile. "Then you'll explain yourself. Be honest with him, Laura. That's all anyone can ask for." The next morning, Laura woke up determined to confront Ryan, Not just about the kiss, but about the diner. If he was willing to help, she needed to understand why. She decided to visit him at the small inn where he was staying during his time in Maplewood. When she arrived, Ryan greeted her with a polite smile. "Laura," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I wanted to apologize for last night, for everything. I didn't mean to embarrass you or my family." Ryan waved a hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it. Life's too short to hold grudges." "That's not all," she continued, her voice firmer now. "About the diner. I overheard you talking to my dad. Are you really planning to help us?" He studied her for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I am." "Why does that surprise you?" "Because I don't want you to feel obligated," she blurted out. "Just because of what happened at dinner, or because of me?" Ryan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Laura, your kiss didn't sway my decision. Honestly, I admire your boldness. As for the diner..." He paused, his expression turning serious. "Growing up wealthy doesn't mean I don't understand struggle. I see potential in your town and in your family. Helping you feels like the right thing to do." His words eased some of the tension in her chest, but doubt still lingered. "And if things go wrong, what then?" "Then we figure it out together," he replied simply. "One step at a time." For the first time in days, Laura allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this unexpected turn of events could lead to something good, not just for the diner but for her and Ryan too. Over the next few days, Ryan began visiting the diner regularly. At first, Laura assumed he was doing it out of politeness or obligation, perhaps to show his commitment to helping the family. But as time went on, she noticed something different about his visits. He wasn't just there to discuss business. He genuinely seemed to enjoy spending time at the diner. And more surprisingly, he enjoyed talking to her. One evening, after the dinner rush had slowed down, Ryan took a seat in one of the booths near the window. Laura approached him with a pot of coffee, ready to refill his mug. "You're here again," she said lightly, trying to sound casual. "Should I start charging you rent?" Ryan laughed, leaning back against the booth cushion. "Maybe. But then I'd have to charge you for all the advice I'm giving your dad." Laura smirked, pouring the coffee. "Well, if that's the case, we might call it even." They shared a laugh, and for a moment the tension between them melted away. It had been weeks since the awkward family dinner, and while things were still far from normal, Laura found herself relaxing around Ryan more and more. There was something comforting about his presence, a calmness that made her feel safe enough to open up. As the night wore on, they ended up sitting together in the booth, sharing stories late into the evening. Ryan spoke about his childhood, growing up in a world of wealth but feeling isolated because of it. "Money doesn't fix everything," he admitted, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "In fact, sometimes it makes things worse. People treat you differently, not always for good reasons." Laura listened intently, surprised by how vulnerable he sounded. She hadn't expected someone like Ryan to share such personal thoughts with her. In turn, she opened up about her own struggles, how she felt trapped between her responsibilities at the diner and her dreams of leaving Maplewood behind. "I love my family," she said softly, "but sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get the chance to see what else is out there." Ryan nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "It's tough when you feel stuck. But maybe opportunities come in ways you don't expect." Their conversation flowed naturally, each word drawing them closer together. By the end of the night, Laura realized she didn't see Ryan as just a wealthy outsider anymore. He was becoming someone she could trust, someone who truly cared about her and her family. Word of Ryan's frequent visits spread quickly through Maplewood. Some townsfolk admired his willingness to help, while others whispered behind closed doors, accusing Laura of using charm to win his favor. Rumors swirled, painting her as a gold digger who kissed a billionaire to save her family's failing business. Though hurt by the gossip, Laura tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the positive changes Ryan's involvement brought to the diner. With Ryan's guidance, John started implementing new strategies to attract customers. They revamped the menu, added fresh decorations to the interior, and even hosted a community event to celebrate the diner's revival. Slowly but surely, the diner began to thrive again. Business picked up, and the once gloomy atmosphere transformed into one of hope and renewal. Despite the progress, Laura couldn't escape the weight of the rumors. One afternoon, as she served lunch to a group of regulars, she overheard snippets of their conversation. "She thinks she's so clever," one woman muttered under her breath. "Kissing a rich man to save her little diner? Pathetic." Laura's hands trembled as she set down their plates, forcing a smile. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked politely, though her voice wavered slightly. The woman glanced up, smirking. "No, dear. Just keep those burgers coming." That evening, Laura confided in Ryan about the rumors during one of their late-night talks. "I hate that people think I'm using you," she said, her frustration evident. "It's not fair, to you or to me." Ryan reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "Don't let them get to you, Laura. People will always talk, especially when they don't understand. What matters is that we know the truth." His words comforted her, but deep down she worried about how much longer they could endure the judgment. Still, she reminded herself of the bigger picture. The diner was surviving, her family was hopeful, and she was building a friendship with someone who truly understood her. As the weeks passed, when Ryan announced his plans to invest not just in the diner but in revitalizing the entire town of Maplewood, the news spread like wildfire. Some residents were thrilled, seeing it as a chance to breathe new life into their struggling community. Others, however, remained skeptical. Whispers of favoritism and hidden agendas began circulating, and soon enough, tensions reached a boiling point. The town decided to hold a public meeting at the local community center to discuss Ryan's proposal. Laura knew she had to attend, not just to support Ryan but to defend herself against the growing accusations. As she walked into the packed hall that evening, her stomach churned with nerves. Every seat was taken, and the air buzzed with murmurs and speculation. She spotted Ryan sitting near the front, his posture relaxed but alert. When he saw her, he gave her a small nod of encouragement, which helped steady her racing heart. The meeting started with the mayor taking the stage to introduce Ryan and explain the proposed investment plan. It included renovating old buildings, creating new job opportunities, and promoting tourism by highlighting Maplewood's charm. On paper, it sounded perfect, a lifeline for a town on the brink of decline. But as soon as the floor opened for questions, the room erupted into chaos. "Why? Should we trust you?" one man shouted, standing up. "You're just another rich outsider looking to make yourself look good." Ryan stood calmly, addressing the crowd. "I understand your concerns," he said, his voice steady. "But my goal isn't to change Maplewood. It's to help preserve what makes it special. This town has potential, and I believe in its future." Before anyone else could speak, a woman chimed in, pointing directly at Laura. "And what about her? Is this whole thing just charity because she kissed you?" Gasps rippled through the room, and all eyes turned to Laura. Her cheeks burned, and for a moment she felt frozen under the weight of their stares. The accusations hit hard. She had feared this moment would come, but hearing them spoken aloud made her feel exposed and vulnerable. She glanced at Ryan, who looked ready to step in, but she shook her head slightly. This was her fight. Taking a deep breath, Laura stepped forward. "I didn't kiss Ryan to get anything from him," she said, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "Yes, I embarrassed myself that night, and yes, maybe I acted impulsively. But none of the help he's offering is because of me. Ryan came here because he saw value in our town. He chose to help us because he believes in our community, not because of some silly rumor." Her words hung in the air, met with silence. Then an older man in the back stood up. "If that's true, then why are people saying you manipulated him? Folks around here think you're using him to save your family's diner." Laura clenched her fists, fighting back tears. "My family's diner doesn't define me," she replied firmly. And neither does this town. Yes, I work hard every day to keep it running, but I'm not asking for handouts. What Ryan's doing isn't charity, it's opportunity. And if you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't with him or me. Maybe it's with how quick we are to judge instead of working together. The room fell silent again, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Laura felt Ryan's gaze on her, warm and unwavering, but she kept her focus on the crowd. Finally, someone near the front spoke up, a young mother holding her child. "I've known the Millers for years," she said softly. "They've always been honest and hardworking. If Mr. Carter wants to help, maybe we should give him and them a chance." Her comment seemed to break the dam. Slowly, others began nodding in agreement. One by one, voices of support joined the conversation, countering the negativity. Even those who had initially opposed the idea softened their stance, agreeing to hear more details about the project. As the meeting drew to a close, Ryan stepped up to the podium once more. "Thank you all for listening tonight," he said, his tone sincere. "This isn't about me or Laura or any one person, it's about Maplewood. Together we can build something amazing, but only if we trust each other." The crowd clapped hesitantly at first, then louder as the mood shifted. Laura exhaled deeply, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. When she finally sat down beside Ryan, he leaned over and whispered, "You were incredible." She managed a weak smile. "I just told the truth." After the meeting, as they walked out into the cool night air, Laura couldn't shake the weight of everything that had happened. The accusations, the defense, the fragile hope now resting on their shoulders. It was overwhelming. Ryan noticed her quiet demeanor and stopped walking, turning to face her. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said gently. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." His words brought unexpected comfort, and for the first time that evening, Laura allowed herself to believe that maybe things would turn out okay. Still, deep down, she wondered how much longer they could navigate the challenges ahead, and whether their bond would survive the trials waiting just around the corner. The weeks following the town hall meeting were busy for Laura. Between helping her father implement Ryan's revitalization plans at the diner and dealing with lingering gossip around town, she barely had time to think about herself. But late one evening, as rain tapped gently against the windows of her family home, curiosity got the better of her. She decided to explore the attic, an area she hadn't visited since she was a child. Her mother used to keep mementos and old family belongings up there, and something deep inside urged her to dig through them now. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of adventure, Laura climbed the creaky stairs leading to the attic. Dust particles floated lazily in the beam of light as she pushed open the door. Boxes stacked haphazardly lined the walls, along with forgotten furniture draped in white sheets. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, where memories lay dormant, waiting to be rediscovered. She began rummaging through the boxes, finding old photo albums, childhood toys, and trinkets that brought back bittersweet memories. Then, tucked away in a corner behind a stack of books, she spotted an antique wooden trunk. Its surface was worn but sturdy, secured with rusted metal clasps. Something about it caught her attention, almost as if it were calling out to her. Carefully, Laura opened the trunk. Inside, she found bundles of letters tied neatly with string, their envelopes yellowed with age. Intrigued, she picked up one bundle and untied the string, pulling out a letter. The handwriting was elegant yet familiar. It belonged to her late mother. As Laura unfolded the paper, her eyes scanned the words, and her heart skipped a beat. "Dear Michael," the letter began, "I miss you more than words can say." Laura froze, her mind racing. Who was Michael? She had never heard her mother mention anyone by that name before. Eager for answers, she read further, realizing these weren't just casual notes, they were love letters. Letters filled with longing, passion, and dreams of a future together. Each word painted a picture of a deep connection, one that seemed to transcend ordinary boundaries. Confused and intrigued, Laura sifted through the other letters. They all shared the same theme: a secret romance between her mother and someone named Michael. At the bottom of the trunk, she discovered a photograph tucked inside a small frame. It showed her mother standing beside a man, handsome, well-dressed, and unmistakably older. The resemblance was uncanny. The man looked exactly like Ryan. Her breath hitched as realization dawned on her. Could this man in the photo, Michael, be related to Ryan? Was it possible that her mother and Ryan's father had once been in love? Determined to uncover the truth, Laura gathered the letters and hurried downstairs. The next morning, she met Ryan at the diner, her hands trembling as she handed him the photograph. "Do you recognize this man?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan studied the picture carefully, his brow furrowing. "This is my father," he said slowly, looking up at her. "Where did you find this?" "In my attic," Laura replied. "There are letters too. Letters written by my mom to yours. They were in love." Ryan's eyes widened in shock. He sat down heavily in a nearby chair, staring at the photograph as if seeing it for the first time. "My father never remarried. After my mother passed away," he said quietly. "He always said there was someone he couldn't forget, but he never told me who. I thought it was just grief talking." Laura sank into the seat across from him, overwhelmed by the revelation. "They must have been separated somehow," she murmured. "Maybe because of societal pressures or family expectations. My mom never spoke about him, but these letters prove how much they cared for each other." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the discovery hung heavy in the air, connecting them in ways neither could have anticipated. Ryan finally broke the silence. "This changes everything," he said softly. "It explains why I felt drawn to you and your family from the start. It's like fate brought us together." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she processed his words. Their bond wasn't random. It was rooted in history, in a love story that had spanned generations. For the first time, she understood why Ryan had gone out of his way to help her family. It wasn't pity or obligation. It was a subconscious desire to honor the past, to give closure to a chapter left unfinished. As they sat there, surrounded by the hum of the diner and the faint aroma of coffee, Laura realized that their journey was far from over. The truth had brought clarity, but it also raised new questions. Would their With the truth about their parents' past revealed, Laura and Ryan found themselves navigating uncharted territory. Their connection had deepened, no longer just a friendship or an alliance. It was something far more profound. Yet, as much as they wanted to focus on each other, the demands of revitalizing Maplewood kept them busy. Together, they poured their energy into transforming not only the diner, but also the entire town. Ryan worked tirelessly alongside John and his team to implement the changes he'd promised during the town hall meeting. Old buildings were renovated, streets were repaved, and new businesses began sprouting up around the square. Word spread quickly about the improvements, drawing visitors from neighboring towns who came to see what all the fuss was about. Slowly but surely, Maplewood started coming back to life. At the center of it all stood the diner. It became the heart of the revival effort, a symbol of resilience and community spirit. Ryan proposed dedicating the project to Laura's mother, whose love for her family and the town had inspired so much of what they were doing. He even commissioned a plaque to be placed on the wall inside the diner, inscribed with her name and a short message, "In loving memory of a woman whose kindness touched everyone she met." The grand reopening of Miller's Diner was set for a Saturday evening, and the whole town turned out to celebrate. Balloons decorated the entrance, and a ribbon-cutting ceremony marked the official start of the festivities. Laura stood beside Ryan, holding scissors as they cut the ribbon together. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and for the first time in months, Laura felt a sense of pride, not just in herself, but in her family and her community. As the night went on, people filled the diner, sampling the new menu items and admiring the updated decor. Laura moved through the crowd, greeting friends and strangers alike while Ryan mingled nearby. Despite the joy surrounding them, Laura couldn't shake a lingering doubt. Could their relationship survive beyond the shared goal of saving the town? Once the excitement died down, would they still feel the same way about each other? Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, Laura and Ryan sat together at a booth near the window. Outside, strings of fairy lights twinkled softly against the dark sky. The diner was quiet now, save for the hum of conversation between her family members cleaning up in the background. "I've been thinking," Laura said hesitantly, breaking the silence, "about us." Ryan turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "What about us?" She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "We've been through so much together. Saving the diner, bringing the town back to life, discovering our parents' story. But I can't help wondering, is this real? Or is it just because of everything we've gone through?" Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Laura, none of this happened by accident. Yes, we face challenges, but that doesn't mean my feelings for you aren't genuine. From the moment I walked into this diner, there was something about you that drew me in. And now, knowing the connection between our families..." He paused, his voice softening. "It feels like destiny." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes, though she smiled through them. "I want to believe that too," she admitted. "But relationships aren't built on destiny alone. They take work and trust. After everything that's happened, I'm scared of losing what we have." "You're not going to lose me," Ryan said firmly, his gaze steady. "I'm here because I care about you, not because of your family or mine or anything else. If you're willing to give us a chance, then I promise to do whatever it takes to make this work." His words reassured her, easing some of the fears she'd been carrying. For so long, Laura had doubted whether she deserved happiness, whether someone like Ryan could truly fit into her world. But sitting there with him, surrounded by the warmth of the diner and the echoes of laughter from earlier in the evening, she realized that maybe love wasn't about fitting perfectly. It was about growing together. Over the next few weeks, Laura and Ryan continued to navigate their relationship with patience and honesty. They talked openly about their hopes and fears, learning to balance their differences while cherishing the bond they shared. Laura introduced Ryan to the simple joys of small-town life: picnics by the lake, festivals in the square, and lazy afternoons spent reading under the shade of old oak trees. In return, Ryan showed her glimpses of the wider world beyond Maplewood, encouraging her to dream bigger than she ever thought possible. Through it all, the diner remained a constant reminder of how far they'd come, not just as individuals but as a couple. On quiet nights when the crowds were gone and the lights dimmed, Laura would sit at the counter with Ryan, sipping coffee and reflecting on their journey. She no longer saw the diner as a burden. Instead, it represented possibility, a place where two worlds collided and created something beautiful. Still, Laura knew that challenges lay ahead. Loving someone as deeply as she loved Ryan meant risking heartbreak, especially when their lives seemed so different. Yet every time she looked into his eyes, she saw a future worth fighting for. One where love wasn't defined by circumstances, but by the courage to face whatever came their way, together. And so as the seasons changed and Maplewood flourished once again, Laura and Ryan vowed to embrace the unknown. Whatever trials awaited them, they would meet them head-on, guided by the lessons of the past and the promise of tomorrow. Months passed, and Maplewood thrived under the combined efforts of Laura's family and Ryan's vision. The diner became a local landmark, attracting visitors from neighboring towns who came not just for the food, but for the sense of warmth and community it offered. New businesses opened along Main Street, breathing fresh life into the once struggling town. Families moved back, drawn by the promise of opportunity and the charm of small-town living. It seemed like everything was falling into place, not just for the town, but for Laura and Ryan as well. Their relationship had grown stronger with time, rooted in trust and mutual respect. They learned to navigate their differences, finding beauty in the contrast between Ryan's polished world and Laura's simple, grounded lifestyle. Laura introduced him to the joys of slow living, the quiet moments spent watching sunsets, the laughter shared over home-cooked meals, and the comfort of knowing your neighbors cared about you. In return, Ryan showed her the excitement of stepping outside her comfort zone, encouraging her to dream bigger and embrace new experiences. One crisp autumn evening, Ryan suggested they take a drive after dinner. "I want to show you something," he said with a mysterious smile as they left the diner. Intrigued, Laura climbed into his car without asking questions, letting him lead the way. They drove out of town, winding through familiar roads until they reached a hill overlooking Maplewood. The view was breathtaking, a sea of twinkling lights stretching across the valley below, framed by the dark silhouette of rolling hills. Above them, the sky sparkled with countless stars, their brilliance undimmed by city glare. Ryan stepped out of the car and extended his hand to Laura. She took it, feeling a flutter of anticipation as they walked to the edge of the hill. For a moment, they simply stood there, taking in the beauty of the scene before them. "This is incredible," Laura whispered, her breath visible in the cool night air. "How did you find this place?" "I stumbled upon it one evening when I first arrived in town," Ryan replied, his voice soft. "It reminded me of how special this place is and how lucky I am to be part of it." Laura turned to look at him, sensing that there was more to his words than met the eye. "Ryan, what's going on? You're acting different tonight." He chuckled lightly, rubbing the back of his neck, a nervous habit she'd come to recognize. Then, taking a deep breath, he stepped closer to her. "Laura, I need to tell you something. Something I've been thinking about for a long time." Her heart skipped a beat. "Okay. What is it?" Ryan gazed into her eyes, his expression serious yet filled with warmth. "When I first came to Maplewood, I thought I was here to invest in a town, to make a difference. But now I realize that wasn't the real reason. The truth is, I came here because of you. Because somewhere deep inside, I think I always knew our paths were meant to cross." Laura felt tears welling up in her eyes, though she couldn't explain why. "Ryan, I didn't understand it at first," he continued, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "But now I see it clearly. You've changed me, Laura. You've taught me what it means to truly care about someone, not because of what they represent, but because of who they are. And I can't imagine my life without you in it." Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a delicate silver ring adorned with a single diamond that caught the moonlight perfectly. Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Laura Miller," Ryan said, his voice trembling with sincerity. "Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you? Will you marry me?" For a moment, time seemed to stop. The world around them faded away, leaving only the two of them standing under the vast, starry sky. Tears streamed down Laura's face as she nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," she finally managed to whisper, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, pulling her into a tight embrace. They stood there for what felt like hours, holding each other as the wind whispered through the grass and the stars.